Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tigers podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. Been a pretty active week. Got to sleep in your bed a bunch of times. Had one of the coolest events in the city of Detroit I can remember in the last 60 years. Besides the Super Bowl and the All-Star game, and this actually may have been more fun than both of those things. So talk to me, Evan Petzold. You've been downtown all weekend. The Tigers are winning a bunch of baseball games. What's up?
Yeah, it's been a really fun week for me, man. I mean, even going back to Tampa when I was driving around a Mustang, got a random upgrade and ended up with a Mustang in Tampa Bay, and that was a lot of fun. Went and spent one of my mornings at the beach. I rarely ever do that, but try to sometimes, take time to myself and go do something. I got to sit on the beach, read a book, and watch a guy catch a shark, which was really cool. I've never seen that before. So that was a fascinating experience. And then, came back home and had an early morning flight on Thursday, which meant I had to get up, super early in Tampa to make that 6 a.m. flight, headed back home. And Savannah and her family, they wanted to go enjoy the draft. And I said, hey, why not? I'm coming with you guys. I want to see what it's all about. And shout out Detroit, the people of Detroit, everybody, from the state of Michigan who came in there. And obviously, a bunch of people came from different states. But I mean, the people in Detroit should be really proud of themselves for what happened over the weekend. The Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 3 days of the draft. I went on day one, Mark, and it was phenomenal. It was a great memory. I'm never going to forget it. It was an awesome experience. One of those things where you look back and as somebody who's from this area, you're proud that happened the way that it did. You're proud that they set the record. Not only single day, but also, for the entire draft as well. It was a lot of fun. Hat tip to Detroit and to everybody who had a hand in making it happen, from people who showed up to the people who were on the front end, making it happen way back when it was getting started, to people with the Lions organization, the city of Detroit, all of it, just fantastic. It was an awesome experience. And pretty happy about the Lions draft picks too. Seems like they got, some good guys in there.
Well, we're not going to discuss the Lions draft picks, but I did tweet out my feeling about Brad Holmes, which is I'm going to be 68 years old in 3 weeks. And there's been very few times in my 65 years as a sports fan where I basically look at a general manager and say, have at it. I totally 100% trust your judgment. You have a track record of greatness. You are a much more critical thinker about what you're doing than I am. I'm excited to see what you do. And how many times has that happened in 65 years? Well, I'd say not many. So I think Jack McCloskey for a little while. I would say Dave Dombrowski. I would say Scott Bowman. And that about covers it for me. I will say, me as an old guy who's gone through all kinds of things with the city of Detroit, from going downtown with my grandfather to eat mashed potatoes at Greenfields on Woodward, to my father rehabbing probably 2,000 houses in the city of Detroit, working on them as a teen, as a young adult, and knowing my way around almost every neighborhood, living there a little bit when I was 19 and 20 and 21 in the 7 and Southfield area with a member of my family, one of my great family members, my aunt. I was pretty familiar with the city and had gone through a lot of things with it, but I really got to give a hat tip to Mayor Mike Dugan, because 10 years ago, who would have had these kind of things happening and what has happened to the city of Detroit? And, there's somebody that you could say is responsible for these things. I mean, between Dan Gilbert and Mike Dugan, and there's tons and tons and hundreds of other people to tip your hat to. But at the top of the food chain, you got to at least shout out those two guys. Police Commissioner White, also have to tip your hat to how few incidents we heard about down there with.
There was nothing, Mark. There was
275,000 people for days on end, 700,000 for the weekend. It's one of those times you're just proud to be a Detroiter, and you are proud to see what was accomplished and how the city was portrayed to the rest of America. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So
Detroit absolutely shined on the national stage.
So I couldn't be more proud to be from Detroit. I know you feel the same way. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to say that. So, but let's talk a little bit about baseball. 4-2 record this week. 2 out of 3 against Tampa. 2 out of 3 against a plucky, scrappy, playing very well and have some better players than we think. Kansas City Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. on the verge of being a superstar. Just does so many things. Miguel Garcia. If you're not paying attention, pretty good player. Interesting team. Lugo was really good. I think they're going to struggle with their pitching as time goes on. We did not see Cole Reagans, which is probably a blessing. But you look at the weekend, and as of the 7th inning on Saturday night, KC was feeling pretty good about their weekend. What do you think, Ev?
Yeah, Kansas City probably feeling real good, and then the Tigers snatched that away with the huge 7th inning in Saturday's 6-5 win, capped by Matt Vierling's 3-run home run. And at a 14-degree launch angle, the lowest out-of-the-park homer this season and last season when it comes to launch angle. So that's something that when you hit the ball at a 14-degree launch angle, it almost never goes out. And Matt Vierling somehow was able to get it to go out because he hit the ball 111 miles an hour off the bat. It was an absolute frozen rope. The Tigers also won 4-1 in Sunday's series finale to win that 3-game set. Gotta love the Tarik Skubal show. 7 innings of 1-run ball. So good. Shout out Wenzel Perez for being the only rookie in baseball who actually knows how to hit. He's been a lot of fun to watch as well. But Mark, let's not forget about what happened in Monday's 7-1 win over the Tampa Bay Rays. You texted it to me at the same time that I said it to Johnny Kane, who then relayed my message to AJ Hinch. Best win of the season? ? I mean, look, AJ had said to me, Tigers had 0 walks, they had 10 strikeouts, but at the same time, that was such a phenomenal game from Hobby's hard hits and aggressive base running. But I know he cooled off since coming back home. I don't feel the exact same way about him that I felt about him in Tampa. But Mark Canha even hitting, 4 of his 5 home runs, right? I mean, he hit the 4th of his 5 homers this season. He had dominant, 6 scoreless innings, 9 strikeouts from Tarik Skubal. Tigers took advantage of mistakes from the Rays. They played a super clean game. That was a fun win. That was probably my favorite game of the season so far. So to have that on Monday and then to finish strong at the back end of the week against the Royals. And like you mentioned, I mean, if it weren't for that huge 7th inning in Saturday's game off the bullpen, we might be talking about this team a little bit differently heading into a new week. I liked everything that I saw from the very beginning and then also at the end. In between, it was a little sloppy at times.
The sloppy defensive play is, let's be blunt about it. We're going to talk about this a little later in the pod about, we'll weave it into some of our questions. But yeah, very, very concerning. But I want to go back to, it's the 7th inning Saturday night. Tigers are 2-2 for the week, played, no matter what anybody thinks, a 99-win team that was a game over 500 when they got to town. They've proceeded now to lose 5-6 for the week against us and got swept by the Chicago White Sox, which is holy smokes. But Tampa, normally, very good baseball team. KC, playing really, really well. Playing good defense, hitting the damn ball, beating almost everybody.
They don't chase on offense, Mark.
Tough lineup to deal with. Don't strike out. Put the ball in play. Take advantage of your mistakes. Steal bases. Didn't hit too many homers, but we're very, very good. Not real fan of their bullpen, but saw some arms that look pretty interesting. But here we are, 2-2 for the week. The 7th inning. Been kind of struggling against the Royals all weekend. Up comes Matt Vierling, the object of multiple Gorash data tweets about how he can't drive in any runs ever for his entire career. I mean, basically 85 RBIs and 1,000 at bats. 3 for 20, 2 for 19 on the season with runners in scoring position, a 93.7 average exit velocity, number 7 in all of baseball, yet only has 4 runs batted in. So what's he do? He hits basically the equivalent of a Scud missile that he was only hoping to get over the left fielder's head, and it ends up somehow leaving the ballpark for a 3-run homer. And you're not going to see more than 4 or 5 more balls with a 14-degree launch angle getting out of ballparks in 2024. But was that a beautiful sight or what?
It was awesome to see, but at the same time, it was also concerning because it's like, again, to your point, Matt Vierling hits the ball hard. He doesn't hit the ball in the air to the pull side, and that's still a problem with him. And like that's what's frustrating is like
he did it again today, though.
Look, I get it, but he hit a rare home run. He hits a rare home run that he's not going to be able to replicate again. Like, it's not like you can just hit 14-degree launch angle home runs over and over and over again. Like, that's not going to happen. Matt Vierling still needs to get into the pull side more. He needs to get the ball in the air. And he didn't think it was going to be a home run. He thought maybe, okay, a double, over the head of the outfielder, and it was going to land. Maybe it's a double. Maybe it kicks off the wall and it could be a triple. He did not think it was going to be a home run. Nobody in the ballpark thought it was going to be a home run. And, I'd like a couple more no-doubters out of Matt Vierling, I think. That's kind of my point.
Yeah. I think Matt Vierling also needs to play a lot less third base. You can tell me what the data's telling you. I'll tell you what my eyes are telling me. He's not real good at third. He can fake it for a game or two, but I think I've seen enough. I'm eager for Andy Ibanez to be back tomorrow. We'll get to that later in the podcast as to who he's going to replace. But let's jump to the big two. Question number 1, because I want to know, after a month, is Tarik Skubal the favorite for the American League Cy Young Award?
Yes, Tarik Skubal is the favorite to win the American League Cy Young right now. And if he's not first, he's got to be second or third on any list right now because he is pitching like one of the best, if not the best, pitcher in baseball. And yeah, he's a front runner to win AL Cy Young. He was at the beginning of the year. I talked about it then. I talked about it at the end of last season. We talked about it all off season. Like, this has not been a secret to Tigers fans, of course, because we've been keeping them informed. No doubt about that. But I think people around baseball are starting to realize just how good Tarik Skubal is. I would say there's a handful of guys that you could say are kind of in that mix right now. It's so early in the season, but if we're going to look and ask the question, I think we got to try to provide, enough about some different guys around the league. Tarik Skubal obviously stands out. Toronto Blue Jays, Jose Barrios stands out. Boston Red Sox, Tanner Houck stands out. Seattle Mariners, Logan Gilbert. Baltimore Orioles, Corbin Burns. I also think George Kirby from the Mariners. I think he's also really good, even though he wasn't on that list that I just initially mentioned. Boston Red Sox, Cutter Crawford. He's had an amazing start, doesn't miss a ton of bats, and doesn't get a ton of ground balls, so maybe that's not sustainable. But when I look at my list, I look at Skubal, Barrios, Houck, Gilbert, Burns. Like, he's in that category of pitcher, and he might be leading that category of pitcher when you look at the fact that he has 6 starts, 36 and 2/3 innings pitched, 1.72 ERA, 6 walks, 41 strikeouts, 0.74 walks and hits per innings pitched. That leads all of American League starting pitchers. So he's not allowing hits, he's not allowing walks, and he's doing it better than anybody else in the American League. That's got him number 1 on my list. He's a front runner right now.
Hey, Evan Petzold, when your earn run average coming into the game is 182, you twirl 7 scoreless, and your ERA only drops to 172, you are pretty damn good. So I also, they don't update WAR until the middle of the night at Fangraphs, usually about 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
He's right up there at the top as well.
He will be a 1.3, 1.4 WAR pitcher, which will either tie him or make him second in the American League to Cutter Crawford. And what went on today was really entertaining. I was pretty worried in the first inning when the first 2 guys got on and he wasn't throwing fastballs. And sure enough, J.K. Rogers, who's always really, really perceptive about sequencing, got to the 3rd hitter, and it was bully ball fastball time. And, until about the 4th inning, the next 3 innings, that's exactly what went on. About the 4th inning, he started throwing a lot more changeups again. And he did not allow a hit, another hit till the 4th. And, Tarik Skubal just dominated the KC Royals, and they kept coming out thinking this was going to be their inning, and the only thing that was happening was he was throwing 11 pitches an inning, and they were dragging their bats back to the dugout. So a lot of fun to watch him. It's, is he a Cy Young winner? Well, he's a Cy Young winner for the month of April, which is
damn right about that.
Yeah.
And look, Mark, I know you mentioned your concern early on against the Kansas City Royals when Obviously, you have the situation with the first two hitters, gives up the early run. Again, he went 7 innings and allowed 1 run. I think what I like about Tarik Skubal and what I've learned is that in a situation like that, I'm not nervous anymore watching him. I'm not thinking the wheels are going to fall off. The changeup is so nasty, but what makes Tarik Skubal special is that he's good enough to survive without it at times. Now, I don't know if he can survive without it for an entire game, but we've seen before where he doesn't have a feel for the changeup in the early innings, and then once he finds it, he takes off and he can't be stopped. Like that's it. Really, like, the only problem is, like, he can't be stopped. Can't be stopped. There are no problems with him. I mean, sure, sometimes he has to lean fastball heavy, but at the same time, like, he can pound inside with the fastball, and that becomes a really tough pitch to hit, and then he can go away with the slider when he needs to, and then he finally gets the changeup and he shuts it down. I love what he did against the Tampa Bay Rays, going back to that game on Monday that the Tigers won 7-1. It was pretty vintage Skubal, pounding hitters inside with the fastball and the sinker, and then throwing changeups and sliders away. When he executes that specific game plan, nobody can touch him. He's unbeatable. And if you consider the fact that he doesn't have a changeup early in his start a problem, well, he can still manage his way around it, and then he eventually finds that pitch at some point along the way. He can pitch to all different types of lineups. He can mix his stuff like anybody. It's pretty incredible. Like, I want Tigers fans to understand that this is a really special pitcher that's on the mound. There are certain pitchers that we have seen in Detroit in the past who have been really special pitchers, and I don't want to put Tarik Skubal in that same category yet because, you know, a lot of those guys have several Cy Youngs. One of them has an MVP award. A lot of no-hitters, you know, between the two pitchers that I'm talking about, hinting at. But watch out for Tarik Skubal. Like, this guy he's must-see TV every time he goes out and takes the ball. So, I don't know, man. I just hope Tigers fans soak it in, and I really hope for Skubal's sake that he can stay healthy, because I think he might have some hardware at the end of the season if he does.
That's 2 Hall of Fame pitchers you're referring to, by the way. Future Hall of Famers. But yeah, Tarik Skubal, Monday night was so fun. You and I were having a good time. We will DM each other during games, and he was dominating so hard, throwing the ball inside, so relentless about throwing the ball inside. I actually thought I saw 3 or 4 Rays hitters ask the umpire if they could move, you know, almost erase the chalk line in the box so they could get further out of the box so they could have an angle to hit those inside pitches. I was laughing at them. They could do absolutely nothing. They could move further and further and further away from the plate. Didn't matter. Okay. So if you can't reach the inside pitch, once you start moving away from the plate, you ain't going to reach the outside pitch. So one of those nights, won't be the last time we see it. It's pretty special stuff, to say the least. Arguably the most dominant left-handed pitcher since Mickey Lolich, we could say that, unless you want to offer somebody else up. So the other thing I wanted to share with you, we kind of have updated this the last few weeks, but 5-1 in Skubal starts, 5-0 in my starts, 10-1, 16-12, 6-11 when the other 3 starters start, 10-1 when Mize and Skubal start. Pretty interesting. Not pure luck, but not, you know, there's a lot of skill going on with that. All right. Question number 2 of the big 2. And this is a big one. After a month, how do we feel about the Tigers' chances of winning the American League Central? Do we feel better? Do we feel worse?
I don't know if I feel better or worse. That's the problem. I think I feel like I'm stuck somewhere in between. I think I feel a little bit worse because of the offense, but I think that I feel a little bit better because I believe that at some point these guys are bound to heat up a little bit more. I want to just kind of walk people through where we're at right now entering Monday. After 28 games, the Tigers are in 3rd place in the American League Central with a 16-12 record. The run differential, it's only +3. That's 4th of the 5 teams in the division. That's a little concerning because it tells me the Tigers haven't scored enough runs compared to their opponents, but it's still early, and it's not like the Tigers are the -77 runs like the Chicago White Sox. It's a really, really bad team in Chicago. But again, the Tigers have a 16-12 record after 28 games, 3rd place in the AL Central. The standings right now, 19-9 Cleveland Guardians, 17-12 Kansas City Royals, 16-12 Detroit Tigers, 14-13 Minnesota Twins, and 6-22 Chicago White Sox. The Twins have won 7 games in a row. The Guardians keep winning 7 of their past 10. and the Tigers and the Royals have been pretty similar over their past 10 games, about 500. So, yeah, the Tigers are still in the mix to win the AL Central, no doubt about it. But the Guardians have been really impressive. Good team ERA. Offense is performing significantly better than league average. I don't think that's sustainable. Last year, the Guardians had a 92 WRC plus, 8% worse than league average. Right now, it's over 110. So it's probably somewhere around 95 when the dust settles, which is a below average offense. That's where I think that the Cleveland Guardians end up regressing to. But they're still an interesting team. Like if Josh Naylor is raking alongside Jose Ramirez, if those guys can stay healthy and they can bang on offense, that's going to allow Cleveland to stick around because the pitching staff's pretty good. Meanwhile, Stephen Kwan is going to overwhelm people with singles. So that's an interesting team. But do I feel better about the Tigers than I did at the beginning of the season? Probably not, just because of the fact that, I'm surprised at what Cleveland's doing. Kansas City has impressed me a little bit more than I thought they would. The Twins are finally starting to heat up. But on top of that, look yourself in the mirror. Look at the offense. It's just not good enough. Spencer Torkleson is not hitting. We'll get into that more. Riley Green is too streaky. I love Riley Green when he's red hot, but then he goes through these cold spells. Same thing with Kerry Carpenter. That's frustrating. The young hitters in Parker Meadows and Colt Keith. Colt Keith's got to pick it up. Colt Keith's got to get it going. We're a month into the season. I don't even care about the contract. I care about the fact that this guy's a top prospect, somebody who we saw rake in the minor leagues, and it's about time that he finds his swing again. But Parker Meadows is doing nothing offensively, and the mix and match, it only works when guys are healthy. So Vandy Ibanez isn't healthy. You don't have that left-handed hitter off the bench. That takes away from kind of what they built the roster around. So there are certain things that I don't like. And I think that that's kind of caused me to have a little bit of a pushback on how I feel. Now, I never had them making the playoffs anyway coming into the year, but I think that what I've seen so far, specifically with the offense, has distanced me from that a little bit further. But, Mark, they're 16-12. So, what does that mean?
Well, let's get into that, because if I would have said to you before the season started that going into the last series in the month of April, the Detroit Tigers had 16 wins, what would you have said to me, Evan Petzold?
I'll take it all day long. That's a great result.
No kidding. Because
it doesn't feel that way, does it?
No, the worst month of the season during the Hinch tenure as manager has seemingly always been the way they got out of the gate in the month of April.
It's accurate.
How much better they played after that is, I think, pretty documentable. So I have a bunch of numbers that we're not going to go through because my partner told me not to. But as far as hitting goes, it's been damn feeble for the most part, confusing because so much of the data tells you it's not nearly as terrible as we think it is. Things like how they hit against first pitch strikes, their line drive rate, it's kind of confounding. Yet, their run scoring is just tragically bad. It's 22nd baseball, 3.97 runs per game, but, their exit velo is good. Their launch angle's number one in baseball at 16%. But at the same time, their WRC plus is 25th or 26th OPS plus. So, and, their homer count is just horrendous. So confusing. A lot of weirdly good things, but for the most part, at the end of the day, it's how many runs you score, dude. We can look at all the data that we want, but when you only have Mark Canha doing damage, who has just basically been putting him on his back week after week after week, and for the most part, Riley Green has been okay, but besides that, Kerry Carpenter had a couple good weeks, was really not very good this week. Juancio Perez, lifesaver this week, not going anywhere, I can tell you that. All right. Yeah, they're struggling. It's good to see Jakey Rogers break out this week, and so it leads me to the next question, which is we've talked a lot about 1 month of the season being in the books. Let's, take a wide angle lens view of it. What do we think about the first 28 games from a performance standpoint? What can we be patient with? And what do they need to stop telling themselves a story about and try to fix now? All right. So Robin Chan doesn't get too mad at us. We're going to answer that question right after we take a break. All right, we're back. Let me repeat it. We talked a lot about the 1 month, that 1 month of the season being in the books from a wide angle lens. What do we think the first 28 games have told us from an on-field performance standpoint? Who can we be patient with? What needs to be fixed now?
All right, so one guy we got to be patient with because he's been really, really good, and you already just mentioned him, is Mark Canha. No matter what he goes through, I want to stay patient with him through and through. This is a professional hitter, but he's also 35 years old in his 10th big league season. Something interesting that I think we do need to mention is he hasn't played the outfield since Monday, Mark. It's been a week. He's made one of his past 8 starts in the outfield, and he's dealing with a sore throwing arm. That was something that the Tigers wanted to keep him out of the outfield, so we've seen a lot of him at first base. Part of that's because of Spencer Torkleson. Also, we've seen him a lot at the DH spot. Mark Canha is one to watch because he's so vital to have in the lineup. I mean, this is a true pros pro. He's hitting for power. He's drawn walks. He's got great plate appearances. He knows what he's doing. So we'll see how that arm holds up. That's something to monitor. But regardless, when it comes to Mark Canha at the plate, even if he slumps for a week, stay patient with him. He's somebody who deserves that based on what he's shown so far. Another thing I'm going to be patient with too, Mark, is the bullpen. It's a 2.71 ERA. That ranks 5th in baseball. We're already seeing some regression over the past week. That's not surprising considering the batting average on balls in play and the fielding independent pitching metrics. Both of those suggested a setback was coming. Tigers spent the first month of the season with a lot of luck with the bullpen. Now, there's a lot of talent, and luck is part of the game. Let's not forget that. But the Tigers are probably somewhere around 10th in baseball when it comes to the overall bullpen. Not sure there's enough consistency, primarily because there aren't enough strikeouts for a top 5 bullpen. Still, it's a good pen, though. So if they continue to regress, don't lose hope because there are some guys in that back end who can really pitch. And I think that it's going to be a stabilizing force to them all season. Also, stay patient with the starting rotation. 3.53 ERA, then 7th best in baseball. Kenta Maeda looked a lot better last time out, so that was encouraging. Casey Mize, Tarik Skubal, Reese Olson, all really solid. I'm still uncertain about Jack Flaherty, but I think that he's pretty mature in his ability to battle even without his best stuff. That's something that's really stood out to me so far this season, so I'm super patient with him. I love everything about the rotation, and I also love Matt Manning, who's stuck in AAA Toledo. So a lot of good things going with that group right now. They've all seemed really healthy. Like there's been no signs of, any type of fatigue or anything like that setting in. So those are really good things. And especially good to see Kenta Maeda turn it up. So yeah, Mark Canha, Riley Green, the bullpen, starting rotation. Those are all things that I can be patient with. And I think Tigers fans should be patient with. What needs fixing, Mark, is the offense. Like I hate that. It feels like we're beating a dead horse, but it's a problem.
What's your solution?
And that's my problem is, right, like there isn't a solution because I like the approach generally from Tigers hitters, but I absolutely hate the execution most nights. And that's really frustrating and it's probably the thing that needs to change more than anything. Now, how does that change? I think if we had the answer, the Tigers would have the answer. I think ultimately it's up to the individual. Maybe the Tigers just aren't as talented as other teams when it comes to the offense. Maybe there is too much inconsistency in certain guys' game and some guys are lifeless right now. But that's the big thing that I'm struggling with is because I think that like the team approach for individual pitchers is really good. And I think that's something that's improved significantly over the past, season or two. But it's the execution that we're just not seeing at a consistent enough rate. Why is that the case? I don't know. I can't put my finger on that. And that ultimately boils down to the player taking the plan, from the dugout, from the pregame meeting to the on-deck circle, to the batter's box, and then executing it against the pitcher. And having that be a 1 through 9 philosophy that gets held up and the baton gets passed. Like we hear that all the time. But for some reason, I think the approach is good, but the execution of that approach it seems like it's been pretty crummy. Like it's just not consistent enough. That's kind of been my issue. And that's, I don't know. I can't figure it out. You got a better idea?
Well, considering I think it's a well-known fact how much meaner I am than you, I'll be a little more blunt about it. Really, really weak performance on pitches that are middle. Call them meatball pitches. They actually really do call them meatball pitches. There's a metric for meatball pitches. The Tigers are not hitting pitches that are pitchers' mistakes. They're not hitting them hard. They're not hitting them often. I'll tell you who did. Wenceel Perez has. He's been hitting some meatball pitches pretty well this week.
And he's on time for that fastball.
On time. Mark Canha, for sure. Riley Green, I think the most frustrating part about Riley is he'll have some great games where he'll really hit the ball hard twice. You wait for him to carry the approach and execution over to the next day, and he'll roll over. He got called on. He did this the other day. He got called on strikes first 2 at bats, rolled over in his 3rd at bat. And I was like, what happened to yesterday? What was going on here? So he's now exceeded my April 26th takeoff date. He is scuffling in a good way. He's still got over an 800 OPS. He's still got close to a 20% walk percentage. And he's got a few bombs, but we need to see it on a day-to-day basis. I think the bigger question in the room, Parker Meadows is the last ranked hitter by performance in Major League Baseball. Not only is he the last ranked hitter by average, but by X batting average, which is, how well you're hitting the baseball and your deserved average based on how you put the ball in play. He was an 097 XBA.
It's really bad.
Last in baseball. Has he hit the ball a couple times in the last 4 or 5 days? Well, yep. Got one pulled back from the stands the other night by Adam Frazier, cost the Tigers a baseball game. He's hit 2 balls to left field that were deep and had a chance. He hit a homer. So yes, his contact quality is improving. But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, with 2 weeks in Toledo, help Parker Meadows. And now that you have Wenceel Perez and soon to be Matt Vierling to play center field for 2 weeks, are they going to consider doing something like that? Because Andy Ibanez is coming back. He's going to play more third base than Matt Vierling. I think that we can feel pretty confident in saying that. He's also going to play some second base because, to be honest with you, although Colt Keith is, hitting in the 170s, his X batting average was 250, but this quality of these bats last week, he hasn't hit the ball hard very often in the last week. It's concerning because he's usually really good about fixing himself. So you have 2 players you need to be worried about. Jakey Rogers has really started to sting the ball in the last week, which is a big help to the Tigers because when he stings the ball occasionally, the ball leaves the ballpark sometimes, and they need that. So, the other elephant in the room that, so before we talk about Torkleson, tell me what you think is going to happen tomorrow because we know Andy Ibanez is getting recalled from, or his DL stint's going to be over.
Yeah, Andy Ibanez is going to come back from the injured list on Monday. That's the plan. I'm assuming Buddy Kennedy probably goes back down to AAA Toledo. I think the bigger question is when Gio Urshela comes back. So we can touch on that a little bit later. I think we need to dive into Parker Meadows because you can't throw the question out there of, hey, 2 weeks in Toledo and not expect an answer from me, Mark. There's no way it's happening. Not yet. Not yet. I said not yet last time, and I'm going to say it again. I do think that the at-bats have been a little bit better. If Parker Meadows can give the Tigers some power, which he has shown, that he's been able to drive the ball a little bit more, I understand he's going to have the inconsistent at-bats and the strikeouts, and those are going to be a part of his game. But if he can provide at least something, anything on offense, and if that's hitting the ball hard every once in a while and hitting some home runs, that is something, right? That is not absolutely nothing. And so far, he's given the Tigers absolutely nothing on offense. And to be able to give them a little bit of something while still playing elite defense in center field, which he has continued to do, is obviously a huge plus. Matt Vierling is not the center fielder that Parker Meadows is. Okay, Wenceel Perez, not even close. Wenceel Perez, more confident in the outfield recently, I've noticed, which I think is a good sign for him in his future, but he is nowhere near the center fielder that Parker Meadows is. Parker Meadows is an elite center fielder, somebody the Tigers are counting on to save runs, and he has done that defensively. He has saved runs, and those runs are really important for this team. So when it comes to Parker Meadows, I understand 2 weeks in Toledo, maybe you could get him going again, but at the same time, I go back to what I had talked about last time you posed this question to me, which was, imagine if he gets it figured out here at the big league level, and I'm not saying that he has to hit, 250, 260, 270. Like, he might never be that guy. I want to go back. Even in the offseason, I predicted that he would hit below 215 this season. I don't think that Parker Meadows is going to be a guy that's going to rip the cover off the ball. But can he be a guy that runs into 15 homers a year while playing elite defense in center field? I think he can be that guy, and I think he can find his way to being that guy without a return to Toledo. My bigger question mark is Colt Keith, and we loved his approach early in the season. We liked the at-bats early in the season. Even though he wasn't getting rewarded, it seemed like he was working deep into counts. He was drawing walks. Those were good to see. And he looks completely lost recently at the plate. Like this past week has been really bad, week and a half or so. Sure, there are different at-bats that you can pick and choose from certain games, and you can say, yeah, maybe he's starting to find it here, maybe he's starting to find it there. But when you look at the wide range and you look at really the full stretch of the last week and a half or so, I think it's been pretty poor. And I think he's pressing to get hits. He wants to try to make something happen. It almost seems like he's a guy right now who's trying to reinvent and trying to relearn how to play the game again. And I'm not saying that he needs to do that, because I think that it probably is like, I don't want to say a quick fix, because it's never just a quick fix, but it's one of those things that he runs into a couple balls, I could see him exploding and taking off pretty quickly. Like once he gets it locked in, I don't think it's going to be, okay, lock it in and here's an up, and then boom, he's going to plummet again. Like I think that once he gets it figured out, he's going to continue to go on the up and up. But right now, he looks pretty lost. So both those guys, I think they got to figure out at the big league level. Parker Meadows, though, man, I think he's going to stay. I don't see him going anywhere.
All right. Well, obviously you think that Parker Meadows is, a guy that's going to, for the most part, not play full time if they're keeping him up here. And the question is, how long are you going to let him struggle? I think Parker Meadows contributing even almost anything offensively is pretty important. And right now he's contributing nothing. So, I could understand hitting 200 with a 10% walk rate. He'd be real useful at that point, but you're not there. You have 5 hits for the month. You can't do that. Can't be
but
5.
But Mark, neither is Colt Keith, though, right? Like Colt Keith is hitting 161 with a 232 on base percentage. Parker Meadows is .091 with the 200 on base percentage. That's worse than Javier Baez, Carson Kelly, Spencer Torkleson, Zach McKinstry, you name it. They're worse. They're the worst hitters on the team.
No argument. So that's,
It's both of them. That's my point. It's both of them.
I want to give a shout out to Dickerson and Benetti. They did a podcast with AJ Hinch, and if you're a student of baseball, it's an unbelievable podcast to listen to and to update people. But he was just spectacular with the two of them. And what came out, if you listen to that podcast, is a lot of his philosophies about baseball, about struggling players, about player development, about how he likes to see the game played, the origins of those things. And what I'm really getting at is, I think you'd think that Scott Harris was in charge of making the decision of if Colt Keith or Parker Meadows is demoted. But I got a feeling that AJ Hinch, if he doesn't have a lot of input into that or all the input into that, I'd be very, very surprised. I think Scott's asking AJ what he thinks and at what point in time his breaking point is with either one of these kids and what he thinks is best for them and best for the team. Do you think I'm correct about that, or do you think we have no idea what really is being discussed?
All I'm going to say on that is AJ Hinch has the eye test because he's seen these guys day in and day out. 2, he's got the up-close personal feel. He knows what these guys are like behind the scenes. He sees their work day in, day out, both on the road and at home. He's always around. And 3, he's also extremely analytically savvy. So any number that Scott Harris is going to throw at AJ Hinch, I'm sure AJ Hinch already has. And that's a discussion between the two of them. So, yeah, look, I think that and moves like this is probably a constant discussion between both of them.
Yeah, it's got to be a discussion that's already been had, and there's some things they're watching for. I'll be very curious, what transpires tomorrow, et cetera. But they got to be pretty close to the breaking point on both these two players about what they want to do. Let's stay tuned for it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Spencer Torkleson because we need to talk about it. Spencer Torkleson has been getting a few days off recently. He had some good games, but mostly he's had some very bad games. And Mark Canha's played quite a bit of first base lately, or DH'd. And it's interesting to note that, things are not going well for Spencer Torkleson, not only at the plate, but as a defensive baseball player, he is frightening. It's really, really ugly. So tell me if you got any intuition about what's going on, I know they're trying to be patient, but it's getting pretty ugly here.
Spencer Torkleson is really bad right now. He's really bad. He hit 137 with 0 home runs, 5 walks, 20 strikeouts in 19 spring training games. In the regular season, he is hitting 214 with 0 home runs, 10 walks, 24 strikeouts in 26 games. He has 0 power, 0 home runs in the 2024 calendar year. Oh yeah, he's also worth -5 defensive runs saved. His career numbers: 221 with a 689 OPS and more than 1,200 plate appearances. Also, -18 defensive runs saved at first base for his career. He's been bad on offense, and he's really bad on defense. And I think the fact that he hit 31 home runs could end up being the worst thing for the Tigers, because now they're stuck in a situation where they know that that's possible. They know that 30-plus homers is in the tank, but what happens if Torkelson never hits 30-plus again? Because in 2024, he's looking a lot more like the 2022 version, when he hit 203 with 8 homers in 110 games. Not as much like the 2023 version when he hit 233 with 31 home runs in 159 games. Torkelson's not on time for fastballs. He looks confused. He doesn't look like he understands, how to implement the approach that is being talked about behind the scenes and bringing it out onto the field and applying it. He's chasing down and away pitches. He's not turning on inside fastballs like he was towards the end of last season. He doesn't look like he's able to carry a plan from pregame to the game, and that's concerning. He looks lost at the plate. Again, like I said, 2024 Torkelson looks a lot like 2022 Torkelson, and that's what's scary. That's the problem offensively.
It's my problem, and it's something you and I have both been saying for weeks here.
So let me ask you the question, though. Better defensive first baseman, Spencer Torkleson or Mark Canha? We've seen Mark Canha at first base a little bit more, and let me tell you, when I watch Mark Canha play defense, I don't think about Mark Canha at first base. When Spencer Torkleson is at first base, I think about him at first base.
Well, let's just say this. Mark Canha hasn't had a scoop, but he also hasn't kicked routine plays.
That's my point.
On the regular. And I don't think there's anything more destructive you can do to any pitcher is to make them get extra outs when you make routine errors.
Not when that's what they build their team around. They built their team around the pitching and the defense being able to hold things up so the offense can learn and grow along the way as the season goes with so many young hitters, right? So if that's what you're going to preach, you can't be giving away those extra outs. Like that just cannot be the case, and that's not acceptable. So, okay, Mark Canha, maybe a better defensive first baseman than Spencer Torkelson, maybe more consistent. Maybe he's going to make the routine plays, whether it's because Torkelson's in his head or just can't make them. I don't know. But let me ask you this question too, Mark. Better offensive player, Spencer Torkelson or Mark Canha? Think about that.
Right now, it isn't even a discussion.
How about generally? Though? Let's go look back at Mark Canha, the on-base king, right? Somebody who gets on. I understand that Mark Canha doesn't have 30, homer type pop, but at the same time, the guy's going to get on base. He's going to put up a hell of an at-bat, and he doesn't take a single at-bat off. He doesn't pop the ball up all the time.
No doubt about it. I mean, from a WRC plus standpoint, it's not even a discussion, between those two players. I mean, Mark Canha, historically, come on. I mean, just based upon his ability to get on base, has had many, many, many more productive seasons than Spencer Torkelson. Look, Mark Canha has had over 111 WRC plus since 2018. So 115, 146, 129, 116, 126, 111 last year. It's at 167 now. Spencer Torkelson, even in his best 4 months, which, were June, July, August, September last year, only at a 120 WRC plus for those 4 months. So I want to talk about productivity. There's nothing to be discussed between these two players. It's just a
Mark,
matter.
Am I being too harsh then? Am I being too harsh?
No.
Is it too soon?
I think we all get seduced by balls leaving the playing field. And, Spencer Torkelson left the field 31 times. He was mashing for the last 4 months of 2023. But let's be honest, in the 9 months besides June, July, August, September of 2023. Spencer Torkleson is not a major league hitter. He's been horrible. He was horrible for all of 2022. He was not very good in April and May of 2023, and he's been unplayable in 2024. So,
and I'd agree with unplayable, and I think it's fair. I think that's fair.
Look, the redeeming feature of Parker Meadows is he may not hit at all, but damn, he helps you on defense. Damn, he runs the bases like crazy. Okay. So there's all kinds of ways he helps you win if you do not hit. There's other things he can contribute. If Spencer Torkleson isn't hitting, what's he doing? So
he's sitting on the bench like he is right now. That's been the case. And these aren't scheduled off days. These are off days based off of performance, both offensively and defensively. He's not getting the job done with runners in scoring position. He's not making routine plays. He isn't helping the Tigers.
He's a sub 210 hitter with runners in scoring position, and he's in the bottom 5% defensively of all major league first basemen. And you know what? The one thing I do like about Spencer Torkleson knows what's up. So he knows that he's going to have to start playing much better immediately. And I'll be very curious to see this week how many times he starts at first base. AJ's kind of hiding him, kind of giving him a breath. And I think he's probably, and as they say, reached his last nerves with Spencer Torkleson making unforced errors on defense. Okay, so gotta take another break. We'll be back to finish up in a minute. All right, we're back. Let's touch on a couple of things. Gio Urshela, give me a timeline.
Yeah, we know Andy Ibanez is going to come back soon from his left hamstring strain. Gio Urshela, who's out with a right hamstring strain. How much longer is that going to be? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a week and a half, 2 weeks still for him to get back in action. Kind of still waiting and seeing on that to see how it goes. But he's initiated his rehab, program, but he hasn't played in any games yet. And that needs to happen before we really get a feel. So maybe another week and a half or 2 weeks away from returning. I think that's the big question. Like when, look, okay, here when Andy Ibanez comes back, Buddy Kennedy's probably going down to AAA Toledo. But what happens when Gio Urshela comes back? Because Wenceel Perez is not going anywhere. And here's where it's interesting. Wenceel Perez is a threat to Zach McKinstry because of the left-handed bat. And the Tigers can keep using Matt Vierling more often at third base if McKinstry is gone and Perez is taking up the reps in the outfield. I think McKinstry might be gone at that case, but again, maybe a saving grace is the fact that the Tigers don't have another shortstop behind Javier Baez, especially with Ryan Kreidler injured in AAA Toledo. He underwent surgery on his broken finger. Still unclear when he's going to return, but Wenceel Perez is not going anywhere when Gio Urshela comes back. And it makes you wonder who's going to be on their way out. Like if Colt Keith is turning it around by then, I don't see him going anywhere. It makes me wonder if maybe time could be running out for Zach McKinstry because Wenceel Perez is such a threat, because Wenceel Perez is really good, hitting from the left side. He's a switch hitter, but he's really good from the left side, which is where Zach McKinstry excels from. It just kind of makes sense that if Wenceel is going to stick around, he's going to keep hitting as a left-handed hitter against righties. Zach McKinstry might be forced out of some playing time.
Yeah, I think it's something that we need to monitor. First of all, Kreidler should be back in another couple of weeks. He should be back by the second, by say May 15th. That would be probably fair. That's
so
it.
There's some protection.
B, Gio Urshela played a pretty decent amount of shortstop. I'm not sure how able he is to do it immediately after this injury, but in a game, in a game circumstance where they could recall somebody the next day to play shortstop if, heaven forbid, Javi Baez got hurt, Gio Urshela could fill in at short for a game, no doubt about it. So, as long as Wenceel Perez is hitting, he's going absolutely nowhere. He creates havoc. He walks, and he hit third today, guys. Not a mistake. They didn't draw it out of a hat. So obviously AJ Hinch is paying attention, and he likes the fun that Wenceel Perez brings to the game. And he didn't see it today. His interview after the game when he discussed the homer was a joy. The little boy that caught the ball, that was a joy. So it was a lot of fun at the ballpark today, to say the least, for a lot of people. Wentzell both having the joy and giving the joy. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah,
Mark, he's been awesome, by the way, too. Like, he talked about after the game, he said that he did 20 push-ups, the previous night, because if you go back, don't forget about it. You go back and you remember what he did on Saturday when he hit the ball to the warning track and he didn't get his first home run. He thought he might have had it, did end up getting it. And he jokes around that he did 20 push-ups, on Saturday night to get him ready for Sunday's first homer because, he was finally able to get it over the fence. And he's joking around, having a good time. Like, this is a guy who is playing fun. Like, he's playing loose. He's playing light. Like, let's not forget, Wentzell Perez made some really, really bad plays defensively during spring training. Like, a lot of plays where you scratch your head and you said, how is this guy ever going to be able to play at the big league level? Well, he's starting to hitting 286 with a double, 2 triples, a homer. He's drawing some walks. Sure, he's got a couple strikeouts, but approach is really good. Also has some stolen bases, probably the most aggressive runner on the Tigers roster that they have. And he's been in the 3-hole in 3 of the last 4 games, with Spencer Torkleson dropping in the lineup. Confidence on offense, turning into some confidence on defense. I love the ball that he ran down in the gap there in right center field against Salvador Perez. It was the 6th inning on Sunday, and he ran that ball down in the deepest part of the ballpark, made the catch, made it look easy. And so I think we're seeing a more confident Wentzell Perez as he's found some success on offense. And overall, man, it's just been a fun player to watch. And he's provided a much needed boost for this offense. Like, at a time where they needed somebody to come up and hit, who would have thought it would have been Wentzell Perez getting the job done? There's no way he's going anywhere when Andy Ibanez comes back. I don't think he's going anywhere when Gio Urshela comes back. But like I said, the only question is going to be, who is that? And maybe we'll have to wait and see.
He's been a revelation. Let's see how long he can keep it up. And as I tweeted today, I think it's not going to change soon, but holy smokes, Wentzell Perez played shortstop for almost 3 years in the Tigers minor league system. He played a lot of second base the last couple of years. It's really a shame he struggles to throw right now. It's kind of got the yips throwing, if you wonder why he does not play infield any longer. But you do wonder how much Joey Cora is actually on the side working with him to see if they can't figure out how to overcome that, because if Wentzell Perez could play some second base, holy smokes, man.
It sounds really, like an off-season project to me.
I don't disagree, but it is something that I will remain curious about. And you don't just all of a sudden, after being a middle infielder for your entire life, stop playing middle infield. I know he started playing outfield last year, but that was because they wanted to increase his versatility. He still played plenty of infield. So I'll be interested to see how that resolves, or if it resolves itself. Let's talk about the week we got coming up. We got 3 games against a very mediocre St. Louis Cardinal baseball team with 2 future borderline Hall of Fame players just off to atrocious starts in Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Not the greatest pitching staff. On Monday, we got Kenta Maeda to see if he can follow up on the increased velocity and very good outing of last week. Then we have Jack Flaherty on Tuesday against his old teammates. We got Reese Olson on Wednesday. Then the Tigers go to have some real tests. They're going to Yankee Stadium to play the 19-10 first place New York Yankees in the AL East. So talk to me about what you think's coming up this week.
Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. You mentioned those 2 names, and it kind of gives me the chills because those guys can turn it on in a heartbeat. Those are 2 really, really good players coming to town. We'll see if the Tigers are able to silence those 2. If they are, I think obviously they're going to end up doing pretty well. Yeah, the Cardinals are a confusing team. They've frustrating in a lot of aspects. I think that they could have been a lot better than they have been over the last 2 seasons. Off to just kind of like a so-so start this year. Don't really see things trending up for them too much. Granted, their division is definitely winnable, so we'll have to see. But I do like what I'm seeing from the Tigers so far. I like what they're doing coming off the past 2 games against the Royals. Hopefully that can bleed in to their series against the Cardinals. And then, it's going to be that big test in New York against the Yankees. I'm expecting to see Casey Mize, Tarik Skubal, and Kenta Maeda on the mound in that series. And the Yankees are a really, really good team, all right? They're 19-10, first place in the AL East, plus 43 run differential, same as the Royals, 2 less than the Guardians. This ball club can play. We know that. Juan Soto is a revelation over there, as much as Wenzel Perez is a revelation in Detroit. And we'll see what the Tigers have when they go to the Bronx. It'll be an interesting series and some interesting baseball coming up. The Tigers have an opportunity, I think, to really build on something against the Cardinals. They have an opportunity to have a winning month of April after going 3-0 in the previous month in March. Now they have a chance to have a winning April. If they can finish that out in the first couple of games against the St. Louis Cardinals, that would be good to see. And then, big test in the Bronx.
Well, my theory, good teams beat bad teams. So I want to find out if the Tigers can maintain the facade of being a good team. They got to keep playing like they've been playing, and hopefully they'll beat up on the Cardinals for at least the series win. And we'll find out a little bit about both the Yankees, who are off to an unexpectedly great start, and the Detroit Tigers. That should be a fun series in the Bronx this weekend. All right, it's time to get out of here. It's late. Been a fun week. A lot of fun baseball. A lot of fun things happening in the city of Detroit. I want to remind everybody to rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to Days of Roar. Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere. You can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at freep.com. Great place to read about the Tigers. There will not be 300 NFL draft articles on the sports page this week, and you will need a researcher to find Tiger articles. I think the Tigers are going to come right back to the forefront. They're the only team really playing anymore, and they're 16-12. So it's time to be reading Evan Petzold. I'd like to thank our executive producers, Kirk Crawford and Anjanette Delgado. I'd like to thank the Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, and of course, our producer, the man, the myth, the Sherpa of Days of Roar, Robin Chan. Love to my grandson, to the spectacular Savannah Petzold. Thanks for taking good care of Ev. Till next week, peace.